Imagine standing in a glass boardroom in the heart of Seoul, surrounded by the most powerful tech executives in the world, while a senior engineer laughs at your life work. The air is thick with a sense of superiority, as your presentation is cut short, not because of a technical failure, but because of where you come from. This was the reality for a young developer from the Philippines who traveled thousands of miles to pitch a revolutionary artificial intelligence system, only to be told that his country was better known for its beaches and call centers than for its silicon chips. Little did that room of skeptics know that within months, the very technology they threw in the trash would become the global standard for the next generation of mobile intelligence. This is not just a story of a missed opportunity, but a massive miscalculation that sent shockwaves through the entire industry and forced a multi-billion-dollar corporation to realize that genius does not require a specific passport to change the world.
The tension began during a closed-door evaluation session where the tech giant was looking for a breakthrough to save its dwindling market share in the face of rising competition. They had invited top minds from across Asia to showcase their latest innovations, but the atmosphere was anything but welcoming for the Filipino representative. When he stepped up to show his edge computing model, which allowed complex AI to run locally on low-power devices without an internet connection, the room went cold. The lead Korean engineer didn't even look at the code before making a dismissive comment about the lack of high-end infrastructure in Manila. He claimed that true artificial intelligence required the massive server farms of South Korea or Silicon Valley, and that a developer from a developing nation could never master the intricacies of neural network optimization. He literally handed the flash drive back and told the young man to stick to web design or customer service roles where his people excelled.
This public humiliation could have been the end of the story, but for the Filipino developer, it was the ultimate fuel for a quiet fire that was about to burn through the industry. He returned home to a small shared office in Makati and continued to refine his algorithms using nothing but a second-hand laptop and an unbreakable will. While the big corporations were spending billions on massive data centers that consumed enough electricity to power small cities, he focused on efficiency and elegance. He knew that the future of technology was not in the cloud, but in the palm of the user's hand, and he was determined to prove that his dismissed code was the key to that future. He stopped looking for validation from traditional gatekeepers and decided to release a limited version of his software to the open source community to see if the world agreed with the skeptics in Seoul.
The response from the global developer community was instantaneous and overwhelming as people realized that this Filipino AI was doing things that even the newest flagship phones struggled with. It was faster and more private, and it could translate languages in real time without a single byte of data leaving the device. Within weeks, the software had been downloaded millions of times, and tech blogs began to wonder where this mysterious and powerful code had originated. The irony was that the very same company that had mocked him was now seeing their own internal testers praise the efficiency of this anonymous tool. They had no idea that the solution to their most pressing technical problems was the same one they had literally laughed out of their building just a few months prior.
As the buzz reached a fever pitch, the Korean tech giant realized they were falling behind in a race they didn't even know it started. Their own AI projects were bloated and slow, and they were losing customers to smaller brands that were quickly integrating the open-source Filipino technology into their devices. The executive board was furious and demanded to know why their internal teams had not come up with something similar. When the paper trail finally led back to that infamous boardroom meeting in Seoul, the realization hit like a ton of bricks. The lead engineer who had dismissed the project was called into a meeting where he had to explain how he had let a trillion-dollar opportunity slip through his fingers because of a simple bias. The arrogance that had once filled that room was replaced by a desperate need to make things right before their competitors moved in for the kill.
The next segment of this journey saw the tables turn in a way that no one in the tech world expected. The companies sent a high-level delegation to Manila not to lecture or dismiss, but to apologize and negotiate. They found themselves in a humble office building that looked nothing like the gleaming skyscrapers of Seoul, but inside was a team of brilliant minds led by the man they had once mocked. The Filipino developer was no longer a nervous applicant, but a CEO in his own right, holding the keys to the most sought-after technology in the industry. The Korean executives offered a staggering amount of money to acquire the intellectual property, but the answer they received was a masterclass in professional grace and strategic thinking. He refused to sell the company entirely because he wanted to ensure that the credit and the future development stayed within the Philippines to inspire the next generation of local innovators.
Instead of a total buyout, he negotiated a partnership that would see his AI integrated into millions of devices worldwide while maintaining his independence. This move transformed the local tech scene overnight as international investors began to look at Southeast Asia not just as a source of labor, but as a hub for high-level research and development. The news of the deal sent the company's stock soaring, but it also served as a humbling lesson for the global tech community about the dangers of intellectual elitism. The engineer who had originally dismissed the project was reportedly reassigned to a different department far away from any decision-making roles as the company implemented new diversity and inclusion protocols to ensure such a mistake never happened again. The story became a legendary case study in business schools about how bias can blind even the most sophisticated organizations to the next big thing. The global impact of this technology cannot be overstated, as it fundamentally changed how we interact with our smartphones and smart homes today. By moving the heavy lifting of AI onto the device itself, the Filipino developer solved the massive privacy concerns that had been plaguing the industry for years. Users no longer had to worry about their private conversations or photos being uploaded to a server just to be processed by an algorithm. This breakthrough forced other giants like Google and Apple to accelerate their own on-device AI research just to keep up with the new standard set by a team from Manila. The world began to realize that innovation is the great equalizer, and that a brilliant idea can come from anywhere as long as it is given the chance to breathe and grow.
Today, the landscape of the tech world looks very different because of that one moment of rejection and the subsequent triumph. The Philippines has seen a massive surge in tech startups and government funding for artificial intelligence as the nation embraces its role as a leader in the digital economy. The young developer who was once laughed at is now a regular speaker at global conferences where he reminds audiences that the most important part of any system is not the hardware or the code, but the human spirit behind it. His story serves as a constant reminder to every aspiring innovator in a developing nation that their ideas have value and that the gatekeepers of today are often the followers of tomorrow. The tech world was indeed shocked, but more importantly, it was changed for the better. As we look toward the future, the lesson remains clear that the next revolution in technology might not come from a university in the West or a lab in East Asia, but from a small office in a place you least expect. The barriers to entry are falling, and the power of the individual developer has never been greater. Companies that fail to recognize talent, regardless of its origin, are destined to repeat the mistakes of the past, while those who embrace a global perspective on innovation will lead the way into the next century. The story of the Filipino AI genius and the Korean tech giant is a modern epic of resilience and a warning to anyone who thinks they have a monopoly on the future of human intelligence. The ripple effects of this event also touched the heart of corporate culture within the giant itself. They began to host global hackathons and innovation challenges specifically targeting emerging markets, realizing that they had been ignoring a goldmine of talent for decades. They established a research center in the Philippines to tap into the local brilliance that they had nearly lost forever. This move not only repaired their image in the region, but also led to a series of other breakthroughs in semiconductor design and sustainable energy solutions. It was a complete pivot from a top-down hierarchy to a more collaborative and open ecosystem, where ideas were judged solely on their merit rather than the prestige of the person presenting them.
Looking at the technical side of the breakthrough, the efficiency of the code was so high that it allowed older and cheaper devices to perform tasks that were previously reserved for the most expensive flagships. This democratized access to advanced technology for millions of people in lower income brackets, providing them with tools for education and business that were previously out of reach. The social impact was as significant as the economic one, as AI-powered language tutors and agricultural optimization tools became available to farmers and students across the globe. This was the true vision of the Filipino developer, to use his skills not just for profit, but for the elevation of his community and the world at large.
The narrative of the tech world is often dominated by a few big names and regions, but this story proves that the map of innovation is constantly being redrawn. The courage it took to stand up to a giant and the discipline to keep working when the world said no is what defines a true pioneer. The Korean engineer's dismissal was a blessing in disguise because it forced the developer to find his own path and build something that was truly his own. If the project had been accepted initially, it might have been buried in the corporate bureaucracy and never reached the millions of people it helps today. It is a testament to the fact that sometimes a closed door is simply a redirection toward a much bigger stage. In the final analysis, the tech world learned that talent is the most valuable currency in the modern age, and it cannot be hoarded or ignored based on geography. The success of the Filipino AI system proved that the most complex problems can often be solved with the simplest and most elegant solutions when you approach them with a fresh perspective. The legacy of this event continues to inspire thousands of young Filipinos to pursue careers in STEM, knowing that they belong at the highest levels of global innovation. The shock that hit the tech world was not just about the technology itself, but about the realization that the old rules of who gets to lead and who gets to follow have been permanently rewritten.
The story ends with a beautiful full-circle moment where the Filipino CEO was invited back to that same boardroom in Seoul, but this time as a keynote speaker and an honored guest. He stood in the same spot where he had been laughed at and looked into the eyes of a new generation of engineers who now looked at him with admiration instead of contempt. He didn't use the moment to gloat or to shame, but to encourage everyone in the room to look for the genius in the people they might otherwise overlook. He reminded them that the next great breakthrough is likely sitting in a flash drive right now, waiting for someone with enough humility to just listen and run the code.